You open your eyes for the first time, and the world is a smear of darkness and pressure. There is no grand vista, no majestic sunrise. There is only the damp, packed earth of a den, the ammoniac tang of old kills, and the oppressive, wriggling weight of your brother. He is currently attempting to shove you away from the source of all that is good and warm in this universe. A teat. This is your introduction to life, a desperate, blind struggle for a limited resource against an opponent who is, for all intents and purposes, identical to you, only slightly more selfish. You don't know it yet, but this is the perfect metaphor for your entire existence. A grand promise ending in a grubby, undignified scramble. Consciousness returns to nature's most exquisite piece of fatally flawed cutlery. Official designation, Smilodon fatalis. A name that drips with a satisfying sense of doom. A small gift from the Latin-speaking apes who would later dig up your bones. But to the world, you are known as the sabre-toothed tiger. A name that is doubly wrong, as you are not a tiger and those sabers are less like military-grade weapons and more like ornamental crystal, beautiful to behold and catastrophically easy to break. Fatalis, however, is painfully accurate. Not for your prey, but for you. Your fate was sealed the moment evolution decided to mount daggers on your face. For now, you are just Subject 7. A mewling, sightless kitten whose primary concerns are warmth and milk, usually in that order. Your mother, a 200-kilogram slab of predatory perfection, regards you not with love, but with the cold, appraising eye of an accountant reviewing a line item. You are an investment of her energy. You and your 2 siblings are her portfolio, and she is not interested in sentimental losses. Your brother, the one who is currently using his skull to lever you into the cold dirt, is demonstrating a higher rate of return. He is aggressive. He is greedy. He is, in the brutal calculus of this era, a blue chip stock. You are a speculative asset, and the market is trending downward. This primal competition is your first lesson. The world does not reward fairness. It rewards ruthless efficiency. There is no bailout coming. There is no oversight committee. There is only the simple, binary outcome of thrive or starve. Weeks pass in this suffocating darkness. Your eyes finally open, but they may as well have stayed shut. The world is still just the brown wall of the den and the colossal, furry landscape of your mother. You learn to walk by stumbling. You learn to play by ambushing your sibling's tail, a clumsy rehearsal for a life of violence. Your mother begins to bring back chunks of meat torn from the flank of some unfortunate bison or giant sloth. Your first attempts to eat it are a disgrace. Without your signature teeth, which are still just pathetic little nubs in your gums, you gum and tear at the sinew with the ineffectual fury of a customer service complaint. You are a predator in theory only. In practice, you are a scavenger, a freeloader living in your mother's basement, waiting for a handout. Your world finally expands beyond the den. Your mother leads you out into the Pleistocene daylight, and it is an assault on your senses. The sky is terrifyingly vast. The wind carries 1,000 new smells, each one a potential threat or a potential meal. You see the herds of giant grotzers for the first time, walking mountains of meat that you are somehow expected to one day kill. It seems impossible, like being asked to dismantle a building with your face. You see the other denizens of this world, and the lesson of your own insignificance is reinforced with brutal clarity. A pack of dire wolves, lean and hungry, watches you from a ridge. They are nature's thugs, and you are an easy mark. A short-faced bear, a creature that looks like it was designed by a committee of nightmares, snuffles through the brush. It could kill you by accident, a footnote in its daily search for calories. You stick close to your mother, her massive form a walking shield. Your survival strategy is not courage or strength. It is to make yourself as small and unnoticeable as possible. Your tawny, spotted coat isn't so much camouflage as it is a cloak of "please ignore me." It's the modern equivalent of setting your social media profile to private. It offers a thin illusion of safety, but it won't stop anyone who is determined to find you. Your most dangerous adversary, however, is your own kind. A lone male Smilodon, a rogue element, patrols the edge of your mother's territory. He is not your father. He is a usurper, a corporate raider looking for a hostile takeover. If he challenges and drives off your mother's mate, his first act will be to methodically erase the previous administration's legacy. That's you. He will kill you and your siblings not out of malice, but out of a cold, biological imperative. He needs to bring your mother back into estrus so he can sire his own, superior offspring. You are nothing more than a barrier to procreation, an inconvenient reminder of a previous regime. Your life hangs on the strength and vigilance of a father you barely know. The clumsy education continues. Your milk teeth fall out, and the permanent set starts to grow in. This is the moment your entire species is famous for, the arrival of the sabers. They descend from your upper jaw slowly, painfully, two ivory daggers that feel alien in your own mouth. Learning to use them is the most awkward and dangerous phase of your life. They are too long. You trip over them when you eat. You can't deliver a playful bite without risking serious injury to your siblings. Then the hunt. The hunt is a farce. You attempt your first solo stalk on a ground squirrel. You creep forward, every muscle coiled, your mind filled with the glorious violence of your ancestors. You pounce, a magnificent explosion of predatory intent, and your magnificent sabers plunge directly into the dirt, a full 6 inches short of your target. The squirrel chatters at you, an audible critique of your incompetence, before vanishing into its burrow. You are left with a mouthful of soil and the crushing weight of your own inadequacy. Your mother watches from a distance, her expression a mixture of pity and profound disappointment. You try again, and again. You learn through painful trial and error that the sabers aren't for slashing or stabbing in a frenzy. They are a scalpel designed for a single, specific, high-stakes surgical procedure. The canine shear bite. Your job is to ambush, to use your immense upper body strength to wrestle a creature to the ground, pin its neck, and then, and only then, carefully, precisely drive the teeth into its throat, severing the jugular vein and windpipe. It is a quiet, efficient, and deeply personal way to kill. But the margin for error is non-existent. If the prey thrashes, if you misjudge the angle, if you hit bone instead of flesh, snap. That is the sound that haunts the dreams of every saber-toothed tiger. It is the sound of your career ending. But somehow, against all odds, you don't fail. You survive your juvenile awkwardness. You survive the roaming wolves and the homicidal bears. You survive your own clumsiness. You reach adulthood. You are now a machine of muscle and fong, the apex predator you were designed to be. Nothing hunts you. The world is your larder. You can feel the power humming in your limbs as you stalk through the tall grass. The scent of a young mastodon on the wind is no longer a source of terror, but an invitation to dinner. You join a small group, a loose pride. There is a brutal hierarchy, but there is also a strange, grudging form of cooperation. A kill is shared. An injury is, sometimes, tolerated. Life has achieved a state of stability. You have climbed the ladder, and for a brief, shining moment, you stand at the top. You have made it. You feel a sense of security, a dangerous and entirely false sensation. This is the peak. Enjoy it. Because this is the moment the true, ironic tragedy of your existence reveals itself. Just when life seems manageable, you discover the sucky, fundamental flaw in your design, the one the marketing department failed to mention. It's the teeth. It has always been the teeth. They are your glory and your curse, your superpower and your Achilles heel. You begin to understand that every hunt is not just a quest for food, but a high-stakes roll of the dice. You tackle a giant bison, its hide thick as leather armor, its muscles powerful enough to shatter your bones. As you lock it down, preparing for the final, delicate bite, you are acutely aware that one wrong twist of its neck could leave you with half a saber and a lifetime of starvation. Your primary asset is a source of constant, gnawing anxiety. Furthermore, you discover the pointless burden of social life. One of the older males in your pride, a veteran of countless hunts, took a horn to the hip. He is lame. He cannot hunt. but he still needs to eat. And so, you and the others must now kill not just for yourselves, but for him. He is a freeloader, a dependent, a drain on resources. Your reward for reaching the top is the responsibility of carrying the weight of the failures beneath you. The inevitable decline begins not with a bang, but with a chip. On a particularly tough hunt, you deliver the killing bite to a struggling ground sloth. As you pull back, you feel a grating sensation. A small piece of the tip of your left saber has flaked off. It's not a catastrophic break, not yet, but it's a hairline crack in the foundation of your existence. It doesn't grow back. The blade is no longer perfect. It introduces a tiny, almost imperceptible weakness. From now on, every bite will carry a little more risk. The anxiety ratchets up a notch. You become more cautious, less willing to take on the largest prey. You start to let the younger, more reckless members of your pride initiate the attack. Your status begins its slow, inexorable slide from prime hunter to experienced support staff. Years of this grinding existence take their toll. It's not just the teeth. It's the accumulation of small injuries, the wear and tear of a life lived at full throttle. Your joints begin to ache with a dull, persistent fire, a condition the future apes will call arthritis. The explosive burst of speed you need for a successful ambush is just a little less explosive. You are half a step slower, half a beat behind the rhythm of the hunt. In the world of the predator, this is a death sentence handed out in slow motion. The younger cats, full of the ignorant confidence you once had, now push you away from the best parts of the kill. You find yourself relegated to the periphery, gnawing on scraps, a king in exile within his own court. The fear you once inspired in others is slowly being replaced by a more corrosive emotion: pity. Your final confrontation is not a heroic battle with a worthy foe. It is a pathetic, common, administrative error. A Colombian mammoth, old and sick, has wandered into the great trap of the plains, the La Brite arpits. It is bellowing, its legs caught in the thick, viscous asphalt that shimmers like black water under the sun. To your aging, desperate eyes, this is not a warning. It is an opportunity. It is an all-you-can-eat buffet, a free meal that requires no chase, no struggle, no risk to your fragile teeth. The ultimate retirement plan. Driven by the gnawing hunger in your belly and the fading memory of your own power, you move in. You will not make a kill. You will simply scavenge. It's beneath you, but you're past the point of pride. You pick your way across the treacherous ground, avoiding the larger pools, and approach the dying mammoth. You take your first bite, and then you try to step back, but your paw does not lift. It is caught. You pull, a flicker of annoyance turning into a jolt of panic. The tar holds you with a quiet, patient, unyielding grip. You are a 200-kilogram powerhouse, but you are fighting against geology. It is a battle you cannot win. The more you struggle, the more you flail, the deeper you sink into the warm, sticky embrace of the earth. The mammoth has stopped bellowing. The sun beats down. Flies begin to land on your face. Your final challenge is not a rival or a prey animal. It is your own desperate, foolish miscalculation. Your end is not a moment, but a process. It is profoundly, excruciatingly boring. Days are measured by the slow rise and fall of the sun. Nights are filled with the sounds of a world that is carrying on perfectly well without you. You watch other predators approach the pits, circle, and wisely decide against the easy meal. They learn from your mistake, a final, galling insult. You are now a warning sign, a cautionary tale. Your magnificent, fatalistic life boils down to this: a slow, undignified sinking into a pool of natural asphalt, your roars of frustration weakening to pathetic mews. Your final thought is not of glory or family or the thrill of the hunt. It is the simple, sticky, all-encompassing realization that you have been a complete and utter fool. As the black tar closes over your head, sealing you in a perfect, airless tomb for the next 10,000 years, a new story is beginning just a few miles away. In a freshly dug den, a new litter of kittens is born into the same familiar darkness. They are blind, they are helpless. And one of them, the pushy one, is already shoving his brother off a teat. Their lives have just begun. Their story will be exactly the same as yours. It is a perfect, pointless, endlessly repeating cycle of flawed design. Why does it suck to be a saber-toothed tiger? Because you were nature's perfect killing machine, built with a fatal, self-destructing design flaw, destined to end up as a perfectly preserved museum exhibit of spectacular failure. So, that's your life. A short, brutal, and ultimately meaningless cycle, repeated ad nauseam until the climate changed and your food disappeared. You'd think that would be enough tragedy for one creature. An entire existence bookended by sibling rivalry and a tar pit. But you were special. You were unlucky enough to exist at the same time as another, even more problematic primate lurking at the edges of your world. And that's when your personal, biological tragedy became a historical catastrophe. They would outlive you. And then they would decide what you meant. Your second life, the one that happened after you were dead, would be even more insulting than the first. You were about to make the transition from predator to intellectual property, and the royalties, you would find, were non-existent. The first of these new, clever apes to encounter you, the ones future generations would call Paleo-Indians, didn't see an animal. They didn't have neat little boxes for megafauna and ecosystems. When you padded silently out of the tree line, 7-inch daggers gleaming, you were not a collection of biological traits. You were an event, a phenomenon, a physical manifestation of power and terror that had to be processed through the only lens they had, mythology. Were you a god? A monster? A demon sent to test their courage? The answer, in their practical, superstitious minds, was a simple and confusing yes. You were a forest spirit to be revered and a walking nightmare to be slain, often in the same thought. Your entire identity, the complex reality of your existence, was immediately hijacked and redefined by the fears and fantasies of these primitive, shivering bipeds. You were no longer just you. You were a symbol. And being a symbol is a far more dangerous profession than being a predator. This divine status, you quickly learned, came with absolutely no benefits package. Being painted crudely on the wall of a cave, an act they seemed to think was a great honor, did nothing to stop them from meticulously chipping flint into razor-sharp points and binding them to long, sturdy stakes. They worshipped your strength, yes, but their form of worship was to conspire tirelessly on how to overcome it. They would study your habits. They would learn your paths to the waterhole. And then they would orchestrate an ambush, a swarm of fragile but terrifyingly intelligent creatures working in concert. They would use fire to drive you into a trap, their shouts and screams replacing the respectful silence they held for you just yesterday. The ultimate expression of their reverence for your power was to hunt you down and kill you. Your divine purpose, it turned out, was to be the ultimate test of their manhood. Once you were dead, your hide, which you had been rather fond of, became a warm blanket. Your bones, which had carried you across these plains, were cracked open for their marrow. And your teeth, your magnificent, fatally flawed sabers, became the ultimate trophy. The shaman would wear one around his neck, a physical representation of the fact that they had conquered a god. The irony was suffocating. They placed you on a divine pedestal for the sole purpose of making you a more prestigious target. As their numbers grew, you became more than a symbolic adversary. You became an inconvenience. Their pathetic little settlements, little pockets of noise and smoke, began to dot the landscape. They didn't understand your hunting grounds or your migratory paths. You just knew that the herd of bison you had been following for a week was suddenly being decimated by a pack of them. You weren't just a predator anymore. You were competition. You were a pest. You were a threat to their way of life, a concept that seemed to primarily involve killing everything in sight and being surprised when other things tried to do the same. Every kill you made was a direct theft from their larder. You were recast as the villain in their story of progress, a monstrous relic holding them back from their manifest destiny of covering the entire continent with their offspring and their garbage. You were blamed for their failures, demonized for simply existing in a home that had been yours for millennia before they even figured out how to walk upright properly. The injustice was breathtaking. You weren't encroaching on their territory. They were building their villages in your kitchen. Your first tragic legacy, therefore, was to be the ultimate benchmark of their success. Being worshipped was just a prelude to being sacrificed. Being a symbol of the wild was just another way of being a target. Your extinction, which they eagerly helped along by being far too efficient at hunting your prey, was not a tragedy to them. It was a graduation ceremony. They had faced the final boss of the Paleolithic wilderness, and they had won. You were now a ghost story they could tell their children, a myth that proved their supremacy. Your memory became the foundation stone of their new world order, a world where they were the unquestioned apex predator. Your role in their history was to be overcome. And then, you were gone. For thousands of years, you were nothing. Less than a ghost. You were erased. The world changed, the ice retreated, and the humans who had once trembled at your shadow were now building cities, forging empires, and killing each other with a systematic efficiency they had once reserved for you. Then, one day, a farmer in a place they would eventually call California was digging a well. His shovel struck something hard. He pulled it out of the earth, a long, curved, fossilized fong. He had no context for you. He had no memory of Smilodon. He looked at this object, this impossible tooth, and his mind, steeped in a new set of superstitions, reached for the only available explanation. It was a dragon's tooth. It was the bone of a giant, a Nephilim from his holy book. It was evidence of a biblical flood, a remnant of a monstrous world rightly purged by a wrathful God. You were resurrected, but not as you were. You were demoted from a conquered god to a mythological misidentification. Your terrifying, flesh and blood reality was overridden by their fairy tales. You were no longer a creature of nature. You were a bad omen, a symbol of demonic forces, a convenient piece of evidence for whatever theological argument needed making that day. Your new age of usefulness was even more humiliating than the last. Your bones, once symbols of your power, now became curiosities. Your skull, which once housed the cunning brain of an apex predator, might end up in a nobleman's cabinet of wonders in some drafty European castle. It would sit on a dusty shelf next to a desiccated mermaid's hand, a monkey's torso stitched to a fishtail, and a shard of the true crosses. You were no longer a being. You were an object, a conversation piece for the rich and the credulous. Your name was not spoken because it was unknown. You were simply the giant's tooth, or the dragon bone. Your physical remains were sometimes ground into powder, sold by charlatans as a cure for everything from impotence to cowardice. The irony was so thick you could have choked on it. The dust of the ultimate predator being sold as a magical remedy to the very species that had rendered you obsolete. You had transitioned from an entry in the book of life to an entry in a rich man's ledger, your value determined not by your strength, but by your strangeness. You were property. The collateral damage of this era was a profound and total erasure. While your bones were being used as paperweights and fake medicine, the humans of this new world were busy perfecting the art of extermination. They had guns now, and steel traps, and a seemingly unquenchable desire to tame every last corner of the wilderness. They did to the wolves, the bears, and the great cats of their own time what their ancestors had done to you, but with a terrifying, industrial zeal. They waged war on the very concept of a predator. They were systematically destroying your ecological successors, salting the earth of the niche you had once occupied. They were conquering continents, felling forests, and plowing prairies, ensuring that nothing remotely like you could ever evolve to challenge them again. Your extinction wasn't enough. They had to demolish the entire building that you once lived in. The punchline of this entire age, the deeply cynical summary of your medieval and early modern experience, was this: the greatest indignity wasn't being hunted to extinction. It was being so thoroughly and completely forgotten that when they stumbled upon your remains, they couldn't even invent a good monster for you. You were just lumped in with dragons and giants, the generic fantasy creatures of their infantile imaginations. Your majesty was forgotten. Your efficiency was lost to time. You were just raw material for their superstitions, a mislabeled curiosity. Your second legacy was to be a testament to the fact that it is far worse to be misunderstood than it is to be hated. You weren't even a tragic figure yet. You were just a case of mistaken identity. Then came the age of science and industry, and with it, your most insulting resurrection yet. In the 19th century, men with spectacles and an obsession with classification finally got their hands on you. They dug you out of the tar pits in staggering numbers. They laid out your bones on vast tables, measured your skull with calipers, and debated your posture. They scraped away the mythology and replaced it with something far colder: data. You were no longer a dragon. You were a specimen. You were given back your name, Smilodon fatalis, a clinical label that stripped you of all mystery. You were reassembled, your bones wired together into a permanent, silent roar, and mounted in the halls of their new temples, museums of natural history. You were now officially classified, cataloged, and filed away. You had been redefined as a data point, a fascinating but closed chapter in the history of life. But just as you were settling into your quiet, dusty afterlife as a scientific curiosity, a new force discovered you: commerce. The industrialists and the advertisers, the pioneers of the modern age of selling people things they don't need, saw your image and recognized its power. You were ferocious. You were intimidating. Your sabers were ridiculously photogenic. You became the perfect logo. Your powerful visage was slapped onto the side of gasoline pumps to imply power for their pathetic metal carriages. Your name was appropriated for sports teams. Your silhouette used to sell tires. Your growl synthesized to promote action movies. The image of your head, once a symbol of divine terror on a cave wall, was now a registered trademark used to move product. Simultaneously, another group discovered your utility: the nascent conservation movement, awash in guilt over the buffalo and the passenger pigeon, needed a poster child for extinction. And who better than you? You were big, you were dramatic, and best of all, you were already gone. So there was no complicated and expensive work to be done. You became a sad, romantic symbol of all the nature they had destroyed. You were a problem to be mourned, a logo to be licensed, and a specimen to be studied, all at the same time. What was your new purpose in this brave new world? After being replaced by their spears, their guns, and finally their machines, your final job was to inspire guilt. You became a spectacle. Your reassembled skeleton was the star attraction in the museum hall, designed to elicit a few seconds of awe from school children before they ran off to the gift shop to buy a plastic, brightly colored, and anatomically incorrect replica of you. Your entire existence, your brutal struggle for survival, your magnificent reign as an apex predator, was reduced to a 2-minute stop on a family's day out. You were there to make them feel a fleeting, sentimental sadness for the wild world they had so thoroughly vanquished. You were an object of study in a paleontologist's lab, your bones drilled and sampled to answer their questions about diet and locomotion. You were a living, breathing symbol of humanity's destructive past, a role you performed by being spectacularly dead. Your usefulness was no longer in your strength, but in your tragedy. You were a tool for their emotional catharsis, a way for them to feel bad about the past without having to change anything in the present. The concept of conservation, as it applied to you, was the ultimate black comedy. They couldn't save you. You were 10,000 years too late for that. So instead, they preserved you. They preserved you in asphalt. They preserved you in museum drawers. And most insultingly, they preserved you on film. They hired actors and later, computer animators to create simulations of you. They made you walk and hunt and roar again, all at their command, for documentaries like this one. They directed your ghost, choreographing your life and death to fit their narrative needs. They put your real bones behind velvet ropes and panes of glass, a king imprisoned in a climate-controlled gallery. This was not a safe haven. It was a mausoleum where the tour guides were the descendants of the murderers. Tourists, your destroyer's descendants, would stand before your skeleton, their camera flashes glinting off your fossilized teeth. They would read the little plaque describing your ferocity and your extinction, shake their heads sadly for a moment, and then move on to the dinosaurs. You were a living museum exhibit, except for the living part. You were a ghost trapped in the prison of their kindness. And so we arrive at the final, most profound punchline of your long and tragic story. This is your ultimate legacy, the final, cynical truth of your relationship with humanity. They value you infinitely more in extinction than they ever could have in life. In life, you were a competitor, a danger, a problem to be solved. You were an obstacle to their manifest destiny. In death, you are perfect. You are safe. You are a commodity. You are a thrilling monster who can't hurt anyone. You are a tragedy that requires no action. They can love the idea of you because they never have to face the reality of you. They spend millions of dollars to dig up your bones, to display them, to animate your likeness, to write sad songs and somber television specials about your demise. They do all of this so they can feel better about the concrete and steel world they built directly on top of your grave. It is the ultimate act of sentimental hypocrisy. Your final, tragic legacy is to be perfectly preserved in two distinct forms. As a skeleton trapped in asphalt, a monument to your magnificent failure, and as a CGI caricature in a movie, a sanitized ghost to entertain their children. Both are curated, owned, and operated by the very species that orchestrated your disappearance. And you don't see a single cent from the merchandising. Your story is a perfect loop of futility. You were born into a struggle you were destined to lose against your own siblings. You grew into a body whose greatest strength was its most profound weakness. You peaked, and the only way left to go is down, into a slow decline of aching joints and chipped teeth. And you died, not in a blaze of glory, but because of a stupid, hungry miscalculation that left you stuck in tar. That was your biological tragedy, a cruel joke played by evolution. But your historical tragedy was somehow even worse. You were killed off by a species that then forgot you, then misidentified you as a dragon, then dissected you for data, then turned you into a corporate logo and a symbol of their own manufactured guilt. They took your life, your home, your prey, and finally, your very identity. They replaced it with a narrative that served them, a story where you were the monster, then the trophy, and finally, the sad, beautiful loser. It's a story they are very fond of telling. It makes them feel powerful and thoughtful and just a little bit sad, which is their favorite combination of emotions. They look at your skeleton and see a reflection, not of you, but of themselves as conquerors, as thinkers, as stewards of a planet they now own outright. Your magnificent, violent, and ultimately pointless existence has been fully processed, packaged, and sold back to the world as a lesson in their own greatness. A lesson paid for with your extinction. And as you stand there, a silent assembly of bone and wire in the hushed hall of a museum, you are the ultimate symbol of nature's raw power, completely and utterly tamed. The school children who gawk at your sabers have no concept of the brutal, bloody reality you inhabited. They see a movie monster, a prehistoric celebrity. They will never know the smell of a fresh kill, the chilling wind of the ice age, the constant, gnawing fear of a broken tooth, or the slow, sticky pull of the tar. All of that has been erased. All that is left is the sanitized artifact, the approved narrative. You are no longer an animal. You are an idea. And they can do whatever they want with an idea. They can make you a hero, a villain, a warning, a mascot. Your truth is irrelevant. All that matters is your utility to them, the last and most enduring form of being hunted. You have been captured more completely in death than you ever could have been in life, not by spears or traps, but by their stories. That is your final, silent legacy, to be the raw material for the myths of your conquerors, forever and ever. Amen. The most exquisite irony is that your fame is directly proportional to your absence. The more extinct you are, the more popular you become. There are no theme park rides for the common deer. No blockbuster movies about the surviving wolf packs of North America. They are still a nuisance, a real-world problem involving livestock and land use. But you are perfect. You are a problem with no modern political or economic complications. You are a safe monster. Loving you requires nothing but the purchase of a ticket or a plastic toy. Mourning you requires no change in behavior. This is the prison of kindness you inhabit. It's a cage built of their selective memory and their boundless capacity for feeling good about feeling bad. You are the ultimate antique, a priceless relic from a world they destroyed, now put on display to prove how much they appreciate fine things. The scientists who study you now do so with a sense of reverence. They analyze the isotopic signatures in your bones to determine what you ate. They scrutinize the stress fractures to understand how you hunted. They build complex biomechanical models to simulate the force of your bite. They dedicate their lives to understanding you, to reconstructing your world with painstaking detail. They are detectives solving a 10,000-year-old murder, and they do it with passion and brilliance. But it is the passion of a mortician, not a naturalist. They are in love with a corpse. They seek to know everything about you except what it was actually like to be you. How could they? The very essence of your being, the savage, desperate, moment-to-moment struggle for survival, is the one thing that cannot be fossilized. It cannot be modeled on a computer. It is gone forever. So they are left to lovingly catalog the vessel from which the life has long since fled. They honor your memory by dissecting your remains, an intimacy you never asked for, and a respect that feels suspiciously like desecration. And what of the world you left behind? The great herds of mammoths, ground sloths, and giant bison are gone. The dire wolves that competed with you for their carcasses are gone. The entire ecosystem that you were the linchpin of has vanished. The world they preserve in their national parks is a shadow of the one you knew. It is a garden with all the most dangerous and magnificent flowers ripped out. They walk through these tamed forests and congratulate themselves on their stewardship, on saving nature, without the slightest sense of irony that they are celebrating a crime scene. They protect the deer and the elk, the manageable, unthreatening herbivores that remain. They have created a safe, predictable, and profoundly boring version of the wilderness. Your ghost haunts these tranquil woods, a reminder of a time when the world was truly wild, a time when nature wasn't something you visited on the weekend, but something that could kill you on a Tuesday. Your absence is the defining feature of their preserved world. They saved the library after burning all the most interesting books. Your final role, the one you play today, is that of a digital phantom. You are resurrected in pixels and polygons, a stunningly realistic ghost that hunts and roars across their screens. In this virtual afterlife, you are more perfect than you ever were in reality. Your teeth never break. Your joints never ache. You never misjudge a pounce. You are a flawless killing machine, an idealized version of yourself created by the descendants of the apes that once hid from you in terror. They make you fight dinosaurs, creatures you were separated from by 65 million years of history, because it makes for a better show. The truth is irrelevant. Entertainment is everything. You have become a character in their endless digital pageant, a monster of the week, forever trapped in a CGI loop of synthetic violence. It is the ultimate indignity, to have your life, in all its brutal reality, erased and replaced by a more exciting, marketable fiction, produced and consumed by the very species that ensured you would never live it again. Consider the sheer absurdity of your modern predicament. The species that developed bigger brains, opposable thumbs, and projectile weapons to overcome you now uses those same brains to render you in 4K resolution. The beings who once saw you as a mortal threat now see you as a brand. Your ferocity, once a survival trait, is now an aesthetic. They have taken the very thing that made you a terrifying and successful predator and turned it into a design element. This is the final stage of conquest. It's not enough to defeat your enemy. It's not enough to erase them. The ultimate victory is to appropriate their identity, to wear their skin as a costume, to adopt their most fearsome qualities as a fashion statement. They have done this so completely that most of them have forgotten there was ever a conflict. You are just a cool monster from the past, like a griffin or a cyclops, but with the added bonus of having actually existed. Your reality has been completely subsumed by their fantasy. You are a lesson, they say. A lesson about the fragility of life, about the impact of climate change, about the responsibility of the planet's dominant species. But what kind of lesson is it? It's a lesson learned in the comfortable safety of hindsight. It's a lesson that costs them nothing. They can mourn your passing with a profound sense of gravity, and then get in their sport utility vehicles, perhaps even one named after a predator or a rugged natural landscape, and drive home on highways paved over the bones of your prey. The guilt they feel is a luxury item, a way to signal their own virtue and sensitivity. It's a disposable emotion. It changes nothing. It simply makes them feel better about their place at the top of the food chain, a position they secured, in part, by ensuring you are no longer in the running. You are a ghost at their banquet, a silent toast to their own success. So this is your eternity. A cycle of rediscovery and reinterpretation, each new generation of humans finding a new way to use you. From god to monster, from monster to medical ingredient, from ingredient to museum piece, from museum piece to movie star, from movie star to corporate logo. You have been endlessly recycled, your meaning shifting with their needs. You are a mirror, and every time they look at you, they see only a reflection of their own fears, their own ambitions, their own guilt, their own sentimentality. They have never seen you for what you were, an animal, trying to survive in a difficult world, equipped with a spectacular and deeply flawed set of tools. That simple, biological truth is buried beneath 10,000 years of their stories. The final punchline, the one that echoes in the silent, dusty halls where your bones are displayed, is the most profound of all. After taking everything from you, your life, your world, your legacy, they now position themselves as your greatest admirers. They are the keepers of your flame. They are the guardians of your memory. The species that caused your extinction has appointed itself president of your fan club. It is a masterpiece of psychological jiu-jitsu, a way to turn an act of extermination into an act of curation. Your tragedy has been neatly folded into their history as a minor, if poignant, chapter in their inevitable rise. And you, the silent, fossilized centerpiece of it all, can do nothing but stare back with empty eye sockets, a permanent monument to a conquest so complete, the conquerors have forgotten it was ever a war. Think of the tar pit, that slow, sticky, undignified end. For millennia, it was a tomb. Now, it's a treasure chest for their scientists. The place of your greatest failure has become their greatest source of information about you. Every bone they pull from that asphalt is a victory for their knowledge. Your humiliation has been converted into their data. The very instrument of your demise has become the key to your posthumous fame. This is perhaps the most perfect and cruel irony of all. You fell for a trap, and your reward was to be immortalized by the descendants of the creatures who were smart enough to avoid it. They stand at the edge of the pit, looking down at the ongoing excavations, and they feel a sense of wonder. They don't feel the panic, the terror, the slow, suffocating despair. They feel the thrill of discovery. Your grave has become their playground. And as their world continues to change, as their own self-made pressures mount, they will continue to look back at you. They will use you as a yardstick for their own crises. Are we heading for an extinction as complete as the megafauna? They will ask, with a delicious shiver of existential dread. You have become a unit of measurement for catastrophe. Your entire existence, all its struggles and triumphs, has been flattened into a cautionary tale they tell themselves. It's a story that allows them to feel the drama of extinction without any of the actual inconvenience. You did the dying for them, and they are eternally grateful for the content. Your name, Smilodon fatalis, echoes with a final, biting truth. The deadly knife tooth. It was never about how deadly you were to others. It was about how deadly you were to yourself. Your specialization was a trap. Your strength was a liability. You were an evolutionary experiment that produced a spectacular, but ultimately unsustainable, result. You were a beautiful, dead-end street. And the clever apes, the generalists, the ones who weren't blessed with 7-inch daggers on their faces, were the ones who simply went around the block. They inherited the world not because they were stronger, but because they were more adaptable, more cunning, and infinitely more ruthless. They didn't just win the game. They redesigned the board and sold tickets to the Museum of the Losers. And your skeleton is, and will forever be, the star exhibit. Your silent roar, frozen in the museum hall, is not a roar of power. It is a roar of perpetual frustration. It is the sound of a creature that was perfectly adapted to a world that was about to disappear. It is the sound of a being that was outmaneuvered by a weaker, but much craftier opponent. It is the sound of a legacy being stolen and rewritten by the victors. It is the sound of your final, eternal, and exquisitely ironic fate. To be admired for your power by the very beings who proved that power is never enough. You are the ultimate trophy in their collection, a testament to the fact that in the long run, the pen, or in their case, the pointy stick, is mightier than the saber. Let's linger for a moment on the image of your plastic replica in the gift shop. It is made of oil, the compressed and liquefied remains of ancient life, perhaps even some distant, insignificant relative of the plants you once walked on. It is painted in colors you never possessed, bright oranges and stark blacks, because tiger is in your name and accuracy is less important than brand recognition. A child will play with it, making it fight a plastic Tyrannosaurus Rex, a battle of chronological impossibilities. The child will eventually grow bored, and you will be relegated to the bottom of a toy chest, your glorious sabers tangled in the hair of a doll. This is the final distillation of your legacy. From an apex predator that shaped an entire ecosystem to a piece of petroleum-based plastic, a forgotten trifle in a child's bedroom. It is a journey of such profound indignity that it borders on the sublime. The ultimate joke is that if you had been less spectacular, you might have survived. If your teeth had been a bit shorter, a bit more robust. If you had been a bit smaller, a bit more versatile. If you had been less of a specialist and more of a generalist, like the puma or the leopard. But you were not. You were a creature of extremes. Evolution went all in on you, betting everything on the power of those magnificent, fragile canines. And for a time, the bet paid off. But evolution, like any gambler, doesn't win every hand. You were a casualty of a high-risk strategy. Your very magnificence was your doom. The qualities that make you so fascinating in death are the very same qualities that made you so vulnerable in life. Humanity, on the other hand, was the ultimate grubby opportunist. They weren't spectacular. They were just persistent. And in the end, persistence beats spectacle every time. So when the lights go out in the museum, and the crowds are gone, and the only sound is the hum of the climate control systems, you remain. A silent, skeletal king on a throne of irony. You are a memory, curated by your replacement. You are a legend, written by your conquerors. You are a tragedy, enjoyed as entertainment by the descendants of the ones who pulled the trigger. They look at you and feel a sense of lust for a world they never knew and would never have survived. They mourn your extinction while enjoying every benefit it afforded them. This is the final, perfect, inescapable trap. It is not made of tar. It is made of their stories. And in that trap, you are stuck for all eternity, no longer a creature of flesh and blood, but a ghost in their machine. Your fatal destiny was not merely to die, but to be endlessly, usefully, and profitably misunderstood. Your story resonates with them for a very specific reason. It's a tragedy with no one to blame. They can comfortably point to the shifting climate, the disappearance of the great herds, the inexorable march of geologic time. It was the Ice Age ending, they can say with a shrug. A natural process. It allows them to sidestep the rather inconvenient role their own ancestors played in the affair. The coordinated hunts, the competition for prey, the slow, steady pressure that pushed you and your kind over the edge, these are footnotes in the grand, passive narrative of climate change. By framing your demise as a natural event, they absolve themselves of their inheritance. It's a historical crime scene where the primary suspect has declared the cause of death to be of natural causes. And you, the victim, cannot testify. Your silence is their greatest alibi. Every documentary, every book, every museum plaque that discusses your end reinforces this comfortable narrative. It focuses on the majesty of your form and the pathos of your extinction, while delicately glossing over the bloody details of your displacement. You are presented as a magnificent anachronism, a beautiful creature that simply couldn't keep up with the changing times. You failed to adapt. It's a classic case of blaming the victim. You didn't fail to adapt. You were thriving in the world you were built for. That world was dismantled, piece by piece, by a rising tide of clever, tool-wielding primates who were ruthlessly efficient at getting what they wanted. You didn't fail. You were evicted. violently. Think of the sheer audacity it takes to stand in front of your skeleton, look up at your formidable teeth, and feel sadness. It is the sadness of the victor, a safe and self-congratulatory emotion. It is the emotional equivalent of a billionaire shedding a tear for the charming little family-owned shop he drove out of business. It acknowledges the loss while simultaneously celebrating the conditions that made it possible. They mourn your ferocity from a position of absolute safety. They lament the loss of the wild from within the heart of their civilization. They have managed to turn your extinction into a cultural product, a sentimental experience that reaffirms their own sensitivity and their complete and total dominance. It is the most sophisticated form of grave robbing imaginable. So you stand, a silent testament, not to the power of nature, but to the power of narrative. The story told about you is now more real than you ever were. It is a story of a tragic, beautiful beast that was too specialized to survive a changing world. It is a clean, simple, and deeply misleading story. And it will be told for generations, because it is a story that makes the storytellers feel good about themselves. You, Smilodon fatalis, have been conquered twice. Once in the flesh, by spears and attrition, and a second time in spirit, by the crushing, inescapable weight of their sentimental, self-serving, and utterly triumphant hypocrisy. Your second, posthumous extinction is the more complete of the two. And so, let us consider the gaze of your admirers. The modern human who stands before your skeleton is a peculiar creature. They are masters of compartmentalization. They can hold two completely contradictory thoughts in their mind at once without the slightest hint of cognitive dissonance. Thought 1. This creature was a magnificent, powerful symbol of a wild and untamed earth. Thought 2. I am so glad that I, personally, will never have to worry about being disemboweled by one of these. This mental duality is the foundation of your modern fame. You are a safe threat. Your terror is purely aesthetic. It's a thrill they can consume like a salted caramel, a complex flavor profile of fear and pleasure that is entirely non-threatening. Compare your posthumous celebrity to the plight of a living predator, like the great white shark. The shark is still out there, still occasionally bumping into people, still operating by its own ancient and inconvenient rules. And for that, it is demonized. It is the villain of their B-movies, the subject of their irrational fears. They do not build statues to the shark. They write sensationalist headlines. You, however, have paid the price of admission for their admiration. The price was your entire existence. You have been rendered harmless, and therefore, you are worthy of their love. It's the ultimate protection racket. They exterminate any potential threat you might pose, and then they charge you for the privilege of being remembered fondly. Your ticket to their Hall of Fame was punched with your own extinction. Let's watch the parade of faces that pass your glass prison each day. Here comes a child, pressing his hands against the glass, his eyes wide with a delicious, manufactured terror. He sees a monster from a video game, a boss to be defeated. He feels no connection to your reality, no sense of the living, breathing, hungry animal you are. You are a graphic, a cool design. He will go home and dream of taming you, of riding you into battle, the ultimate expression of his species' deep-seated need to dominate everything it sees. Next comes a teenager, slouching past with headphones on, barely glancing up from the glowing screen in his hand. He might take a quick photo, a selfie with your skull, and post it online with a caption like Ancient Kitty or Monday's Law. You have been reduced to a backdrop for his personal, mundane drama. Your 10,000-year slumber in the tar, your brutal life and death struggle, your entire evolutionary history, all of it has been rendered down into a fleeting piece of social media content, consumed and forgotten in the space of a thumb swipe. It is an indifference so profound it makes the spear thrusts of your first human adversaries seem almost respectful by comparison. At least they took you seriously. And finally, here is the contemplative adult, the history enthusiast, the amateur naturalist. He looks at you with a furrowed brow and a sense of profound, learned sadness. He reads the plaque. He shakes his head at the folly of it all. He feels the weight of history, the tragedy of extinction. He is feeling exactly what the museum curators want him to feel. He is a good consumer of the narrative. He will leave feeling more intelligent, more sensitive, and more aware. He will feel a quiet satisfaction in his own capacity for empathy. He has successfully mourned you, and having performed this ritual, he is free to go about his day, his conscience clear, his worldview affirmed. You have served your purpose. You have made him feel good about himself. It is the final and most subtle form of your utility. You are no longer just a source of hide or meat or trophy bones. You are now a source of self-satisfaction for your conquerors.